Hey everybody, today we're going to talk about how to use volume as a confluence to get a clean entry in a trade or to just get a higher probability trade. I don't always consider volume when I'm trading, but there are certain situations where it's really helpful. And yesterday, and this trade right here was one of those situations. Actually, the target on this was a bit closer up here, and I'll show you why that was as well. So I want to go over this trade setup. I want to talk about why I took the trade, why the entry was where it was. The stop loss is relatively obvious, but also where the target was. And most importantly, I want to talk about the role of volume in this trade because it was actually really significant. In fact, I probably would not have taken this particular trade if it were not for the volume confirmation. So let's just back up a minute. This was yesterday. So I just want to go and give some broader context to the price action here. Okay, so this is the daily chart, and this giant bullish candle here was yesterday. This was the day in question. And most of this bullish move here was actually during the pre-market. We had a very good CPI inflation print, and then the market kind of rallied up, and then we were way up high. And that's part of what made this a difficult trade and why volume was so important for me, because there was a lot of open space down below us, but this was basically the context. We're in this sort of downward channel, kind of pushing up off the downside of the underside of the channel, the channel line down here. I don't trade based on trend lines and channel lines, but I do like to kind of have them sometimes for context as far as the extent of a move. Looking at the 4 hour, again, this was the CPI move. And so this candle started at 6 and closed at 10 a.m. And just want to give you some context for some of the key levels that we're going to be looking at here. So this 4 hour zone right here, this kind of bold rectangular area, this is the main key level that was in play here. You can see there was a strong bearish push from here, but it acted as support, and then we got beneath it, acted as resistance, resistance, resistance before finally dropping. And then again, this was that CPI print that pushed us way up above that level. Zooming back a little bit more, this is the M15, okay? So again, 15-minute big push up. And then right at the open, we had this pullback into the 4 hour key level and then a push up. So I had this key level here. And the reason that this trade was a little sketchy for me is because of all this open space below. This would have been a little bit easier, I think, if there was like a little bit of a pause here and then we pushed up and then did this and all the rest of this stuff. But there wasn't any like recent action around this other than this one touch, okay? And then I want to just show this really quickly on the M5 as well, just that same area. So this is that single touch here on the M5, right? So with the market pushed up from here at the open and then came back down to this level, and this is where the trade was. So here's where we're going to zoom in a little bit and take a look at this on a smaller time frame so you can kind of see how volume played this role. So this was the opening candle on the 2-minute chart. So we expect high volume on the opening candle. Not really a big thing there. But as price tapped into this 4 hour level, this is what I want you to pay attention to. Is this here is the that bearish push down, and then this here is the rejection candle. And look at how the volume on the rejection candle that had this lower wick was actually higher volume than the push down, okay? So that's clue number one, that this level, even though there wasn't much recent significance to it other than on that 4H chart that I showed a moment ago, this volume here, this rejection, the combination of the candle pattern with the volume what should draw your eye to a level like this and say, okay, this level is still important. This is a level that we want to pay attention to. Then look what happened as price came back into this level. So as this candle came down and hit right into that zone, right? This also, by the way, was where the opening candle wick was. Okay, I can draw a line right there. So as we hit into that, this volume here, I want you to pay attention to this. If I look at the high of this volume, that's the highest volume we've seen since the opening 5 minutes, basically, right? That's higher than any volume we've seen in the previous, this is 11:32. So in almost 2 hours, That's the highest volume we've seen. And it was at the same spot where we saw this situation happen, where the rejection candle pushing up from this area had higher volume than the candle that pushed down. So now we go, okay, now we know that we really want to start to be on the lookout. Now, with this pushing down the way this is doing, making lower highs and lower lows, I'm not just going to buy the first candle that rejects. That's not personally my style. I usually look for some form of a setup. And what we ended up getting here was this double bottom, right? And I actually, personally, I quite like double bottoms where the second bottom is a little bit lower than the first. And especially when it then rejects immediately, because what that is it's an attempt to break to a new low that immediately fails, right? We call it a failure to hold. The other thing that I want to point out about this is at this 4-hour key level, what we have is a situation of a 15-minute or a 5-minute, depending on what time frame you're looking at. This is the 15-minute. We have a double bottom situation. So here's one touch. This is the potential second touch. And then nested inside that on this second touch, sorry, I got to scroll back to my area here. Nested inside that on this second touch is our double bottom situation, right? So let me go to this 2-minute because that's what I was looking at this on. Okay, so now we have a double bottom nested inside a double bottom, right? This is the first touch on the 15-minute, second touch on the 15-minute, and then on this 2-minute, which is where the price action was just the cleanest for me at this point in the day, first touch, second touch. Now you could have definitely gotten trapped in here, on this next candle, but what I really love about this is it tapped and kind of tried to break through this 4-hour area. And look at again, like the volume here. So a decent amount of volume on this, but like this was a huge amount of volume. And after that, after this big volume came in here, look at what happened on the next attempts down. So as this attempted to push down, look how like lackluster the volume was. So probably a lot of sellers at this point are going like, hey, ho, 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 I'm not sure we want to keep selling into this area. And then you get this last like probe to see what's going on down here. And again, just not a lot of volume, not a lot of selling interest below this area. And so I love these failed breakouts, this sort of failure to hold where it attempts to make this new low and just can't, right? Now you could have probably entered right on this rejection candle, but for me, the cleaner entry was, to wait for this next candle here to form where it came back down. Let me get this out of the way for a second. This candle came back down, retested this same area from the opening print where we had all these wicks rejecting. At this point, you could even bring this up a little bit, right? All these wicks rejecting this area. We got back above it after the failed breakdown, retested it, and again closed back up above with that nice bullish hammer. And for me, that was the entry. On a 1-minute, this was basically an engulfing candle, which might have been a good entry as well. But this was the entry for me, was right on the close of that candle. And the reason I targeted here was, again, if we zoom out a little bit. All right, so if we zoom out a little bit here, this is kind of starting to look like it could be an inverse head and shoulders. So we had this wick high here, and then we pulled down, up, and then this kind of big push down again. And so this shoulder here, that was my target. And if we look at it, again, even on like a 5-minute chart, you can see all these wicks here. So all this rejection. So again, I had a line drawn through this area. So resistance, boom, got above it, held it as support, tried to hold it as support, broke back below, resistance, 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 sell off. So for me, I want to get out around that level. That's my target on this trade, which is a really nice target. That's 3.75R. I think I took it like 3.65 or something based on my entry and where I actually closed out the trade. But the key thing is, like, with this situation where we have this giant breakout gap below us, like just open space, free fall below us, the only thing that really gave me the confidence to jump in this trade was this volume situation. The volume on this candle here, sort of showing that this level was very significant. This candle here is what pricked my ears up to say, hey, you probably should be thinking about taking a trade, right? Probably should be pretty interested in taking a trade here. And then this failed breakdown that immediately rejected, retested the area, and then pushed up. And I love that comparatively, this failed breakdown just had no volume. Like the sellers just weren't there once we tried this push down again, and it immediately came back up. So volume was the key on this particular trade. Like I said, I don't always need volume confirmation. A lot of times the price action is clean enough that it doesn't really matter to me what volume is doing a whole lot. But in this situation, I honestly probably would not have taken this trade were it not for the confirmations that volume offered. So I hope you found this video helpful. I hope it helps you to maybe look at volume a little bit more closely in your own trading. If you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, throw me a comment. I'd appreciate it, and I'll catch you all in the next video.